I arrived at my son Brian's house for Christmas morning. The living room sparkled with decorations. Brian's wife, Courtney, and her father, Gerald, were already opening gifts. I watched as Brian presented Gerald with a wrapped box containing a $25,000 Rolex with a red bow. Gerald beamed. Then Brian handed me a plastic piggy bank. Inside, $10 in coins. Courtney giggled. Gerald smirked. Brian shrugged. I smiled, said thank you, and quietly drove home alone. I blocked Brian's number that night. The next morning, I woke up in my modest but comfortable home in a small Oregon town called Millbrook. The December sunlight filtered through my bedroom curtains, landing on a framed photograph of my late wife, Anne. She'd been gone 8 years now, taken by cancer when she was only 54 years old. I still talk to her sometimes, especially when I felt lost. That morning, I felt very lost. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, replaying the previous day in my mind. The way Courtney had laughed when Brian handed me that piggy bank. The way Gerald had looked at me with something between pity and contempt, as if I were some unfortunate relative they were obliged to tolerate. The way my own son had shrugged, as if giving his father $10 while spending $25,000 on his father-in-law was perfectly reasonable. I've never been a wealthy man, but I've never been poor either. I worked as a machinist at the Millbrook lumber mill for 31 years, double shifts most weeks. I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans for a decade, drove trucks until they literally died, and ate leftovers for lunch every single day. Not because I had to, but because every dollar I saved was a dollar I could give Brian. When Anne got sick, the medical bills nearly buried us. Insurance covered some, but not enough. I took out a second mortgage on this house. Sold my vintage truck collection that I'd been building since I was 25. 4 beautiful restored Fords, gone in a weekend. But Anne got the treatments she needed, and we had 2 more years together. 2 more years of her smile, her laugh, her hand in mine. After she passed, Brian was all I had left. He was 23 then, fresh out of college. A college I'd paid for entirely. No loans, no debt. I'd worked 70-hour weeks so my son could walk across that graduation stage free and clear. I was proud. So proud. When Brian met Courtney 4 years ago, I was happy for him. She came from money, sure, but she seemed nice enough. Her father, Gerald, owned some kind of consulting business in Portland. They lived in a house that could fit 3 of mine inside it, but I figured love was love, and money didn't matter. The wedding 5 years ago cost $87,000. Gerald offered to pay half. I insisted on paying my half too, even though my half was everything I had left after Anne's medical bills. I sold the last thing of value I owned, a mint-condition motorcycle I'd inherited from my father. It broke my heart, but I smiled at that wedding and told everyone how happy I was. I was happy, because Brian was happy, or so I thought. Sitting there on December 26th, I realized I'd been fooling myself. My son had become someone I didn't recognize. The Brian I raised would never have insulted me like that. The Brian I raised knew the value of $1 because he'd watched me work for every single one. I finished my coffee and walked to my bedroom closet. In the back, behind my winter coats, I kept a small safe. Inside were documents I'd been preparing for years. A deed to a rental property in Eugene worth about $300,000. I'd bought it 20 years ago with Anne, fixed it up ourselves, and had been renting it to a nice family ever since. The plan was always to transfer it to Brian when he turned 35. He'd turn 35 next August. There was also paperwork for a trust fund. $200,000, carefully saved and invested over decades. Money meant for Brian's children, my future grandchildren. Money that represented every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every sacrifice. I looked at those documents for a long time. Then I called my attorney, Marcus Webb. Marcus had handled Anne's estate and had been our family lawyer for 23 years. Marcus, I said, I need you to draft some papers for me. What kind of papers, Sullivan? The kind that undo everything I've set up for my son. There was a pause. You sure about this? I've never been more sure about anything in my life. We talked for an hour. By the time I hung up, Marcus was already working. He promised to have everything ready by that afternoon. At 4 o'clock, Marcus arrived at my house with a large envelope. Inside was a formal letter from his law office stating that I was dissolving the trust fund, removing Brian as beneficiary of my estate, and canceling the property transfer. Also included were copies of every sacrifice I'd made, paid tuition receipts totaling $93,000, the titles to my sold trucks with their sale prices circled in red, mortgage statements showing how I'd refinanced to pay for his wedding. I added a handwritten note. You valued me at $10. I'm returning the favor. You get nothing. Marcus watched me seal the envelope. Sullivan, you know this can't be undone easily. Once I do this, my son will understand what it feels like to be valued at nothing. I tied a red bow around the envelope, mimicking the bow on Gerald's Rolex. The next morning, December 27th, I drove to Brian's house before dawn. They lived in a luxury apartment complex in the nice part of Millbrook, the kind with a doorman and a gym and a pool on the roof. I'd always wondered how they afforded it on Brian's marketing manager salary. Now I suspected I knew the answer. I left the envelope on their doorstep and drove away. I was 3 blocks away when I heard the screaming. For the next 2 days, my phone rang constantly. Not Brian's number, because I'd blocked it, but Courtney's number, over and over. I let every call go to voicemail. The messages started out apologetic. Courtney's voice, shaky and tearful. Dad, please, it was just a joke. We were going to give you your real gift later. Please call us back. Then Brian's voice, using Courtney's phone. Dad, come on. Don't be like this. We can talk about this like adults. By the afternoon of December 28th, the messages turned angry. You're being completely unreasonable. Brian shouted into the voicemail. Over a stupid Christmas gift? You're going to throw away your own son over this? What's wrong with you? I didn't respond to any of them. On December 29th, they showed up at my door. I was reading the newspaper when I heard the knock. Loud, insistent. I looked through the peephole and saw Brian and Courtney standing on my porch. Courtney's eyes were red and puffy. Brian looked like he hadn't slept. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. Dad, Brian started. Please, let's just talk. There's nothing to talk about. It was a joke, Courtney said, her voice breaking. A stupid, thoughtless joke. I'm so sorry. We're both so sorry. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost $300. Designer jeans. Expensive sneakers. Courtney had a handbag on her arm that I recognized from a commercial. Louis something. $5,000 if I remembered right. Where'd you get the money for that Rolex? I asked. Brian blinked. What? $25,000 is a lot of money. Where'd it come from? That's not important right now. What's important is, it's important to me. Answer the question. Courtney jumped in. We've been saving. Brian got a bonus at work. How much was the bonus? Dad, that's private. How much? $30,000, Brian said quickly. I got $30,000, and we wanted to do something nice for Gerald because he's been helping us with some investments. I nodded slowly. And you couldn't spare more than $10 for me. That's not fair, Brian said. You're taking this completely out of context. Then give me the context. They looked at each other. Some silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Courtney spoke. Okay, look. The truth is, we're in a tight spot financially. We have some debts we're trying to pay down. We wanted to impress my parents because they're helping us refinance some things. We thought you'd understand. You've always been so practical about money. So you thought I'd be fine with being humiliated in front of your family? No one was trying to humiliate you, Brian said, but his voice lacked conviction. Get off my porch. Dad, get off my porch, or I'm calling the police. They left. As they walked to their car, I heard Courtney say to Brian, we need that property. We've already told my parents we're investing in real estate. If they find out we lied, the car door slammed before I heard the rest. I closed my door and sat down heavily. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from sadness. My son had become a stranger. That afternoon, my neighbor Dorothy came over. Dorothy was 72, a widow like me. Her husband had died 3 years ago, and we'd grown friendly over shared grief. She brought over casseroles sometimes. I shoveled her driveway in winter. She knocked gently, and I let her in. "Sullivan, honey, are you all right?" I saw Brian and Courtney leave. They looked upset. "I'm fine, Dorothy. Just some family business." She sat down on my couch without being asked. That's how comfortable we'd become with each other. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I've been debating whether to say anything, but after seeing them here, I think you need to know." My stomach tightened. "Know what?" "Last month, I was at the grocery store, the Safeway, on Miller Street. I was in the cereal aisle, and I heard Courtney's voice. She was on her phone, talking loud. You know how some people do, like they forget they're in public. What did she say?" Dorothy looked uncomfortable. She was talking to her mother. I heard her say, "Don't worry about the Christmas party, Mom. We won't bring Sullivan. He's basically a charity case. We're supporting him because Brian feels guilty. The poor old man worked some factory job his whole life and has nothing. We can't let your friend see him. He'd embarrass us." The room seemed to tilt. She said that? Word for word. I wanted to say something to her right then, but I was so shocked I just stood there. "I've been feeling terrible about not telling you sooner." I sat there, processing this. My son had been telling his wife's family that I was poor, that they were supporting me, that I was an embarrassment. "Sullivan?" Dorothy's voice was soft. "Are you okay?" "No," I said honestly. "I'm not." She stayed with me for an hour, making tea, talking about nothing important, just being present. When she left, she squeezed my hand and said, "You're worth more than they'll ever understand." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept returning to Courtney's words. Charity case, factory job, nothing, embarrass us. Brian had stolen more than money from me. He'd stolen my dignity. I didn't sleep much over the next few days. New Year's came and went. I spent it alone, which was fine by me. On January 2nd, I received a phone call that changed everything. "Mr. Sullivan?" The voice was professional, concerned. "This is Tom Bradley from Millbrook Community Bank. I'm the branch manager. We've flagged some unusual activity on your savings account, and I think you should come in right away." I was at the bank within 20 minutes. Tom was about 50, wearing a suit that had seen better days. He shook my hand and led me to his office. On his computer screen was my account information. "Mr. Sullivan, someone attempted to wire $50,000 from your savings account to an external account this morning. The system flagged it automatically because of the amount. We froze the transaction, but I need to verify with you. Did you authorize this transfer?" My blood ran cold. "No, absolutely not." Tom's expression grew grim. "I was afraid of that. Let me show you something else." He pulled up a document on his screen. "This is the authorization form submitted with the wire transfer request. It has your signature." He turned the screen toward me. There, in what looked exactly like my handwriting, was my signature authorizing the transfer. "I never signed this," I said. "Are you certain?" "I'm 71 years old, Tom, but my memory's sharp. I never signed this." Tom nodded. "I believe you." The signature looked off to me too. Too perfect, if that makes sense. Like someone copied it very carefully. He clicked to another screen. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to show you something else. When I saw this flagged transaction, I went back through your account history. There have been 3 other transfers over the past 6 months. Each one was under $10,000. He showed me the dates and amounts. September 8th, $9,800. October 16th, $8,500. November 22nd, $8,700. That's $27,000, I said, my voice hollow. "Yes, sir. The transfers were all to the same external account. Each one was under the reporting threshold, so they didn't trigger automatic flags. But now that we're looking, they're clearly part of a pattern." "Whose account received the money?" Tom hesitated. "According to the records, an account under the name Courtney Sullivan, my son's wife." "I need you to file a police report," Tom said gently. "This is fraud, forgery, possibly identity theft." I sat there, staring at the screen. $27,000. Gone. Stolen by my own son and his wife. "Mr. Sullivan?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I'll file a report." Tom helped me print out all the documentation. As I was leaving, something occurred to me. Tom, that signature. How would someone learn to forge my signature that well? Usually, they'd need to practice. They'd need access to documents with your real signature. Multiple examples to study. I remembered then. Last Thanksgiving, Brian had asked to borrow my checkbook. He said Courtney's father was interested in genealogy and wanted to see my handwriting, something about comparing family signatures across generations. I'd thought it was odd, but I'd handed over my checkbook for an hour. He'd practiced. My own son had practiced forging my signature. The Millbrook Police Department was a small brick building 3 blocks from the bank. I walked in and asked to speak to someone about fraud. They sent me to Detective Linda Hayes, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a kind smile. I told her everything. She listened, took notes, examined the documents Tom had given me. "Mr. Sullivan," she said when I finished, "I want to be honest with you. Family fraud cases are complicated. Your son will likely claim you gave him verbal permission to access your accounts. Without evidence to the contrary, these cases often come down to, he said, she said. So, there's nothing you can do?" I didn't say that. "I'm opening an investigation. We'll subpoena bank records, interview your son and daughter-in-law, look into their financial situation. If there's a pattern of exploitation, we'll find it. But I need you to understand, this could take time, and the outcome isn't guaranteed." "I understand. Do you have any other accounts or credit cards that your son might have access to?" "Just my credit card. I gave him the number years ago in case of emergencies." Detective Hayes looked at me seriously. "Mr. Sullivan, you need to cancel that card today, right now, and you need to check your credit report. If he's forged your signature once, he may have done it elsewhere." I left the police station feeling sick. I went home, called my credit card company, and canceled the card. Then I called Tom at the bank and had him help me transfer my remaining savings to a new account at a different bank entirely. I changed every password, every PIN number, every security question, but the damage was done. My savings, money I'd worked my entire adult life to accumulate, had been stolen by my son. That night, I ate dinner alone. Just a sandwich. I wasn't hungry. I kept thinking about that checkbook, about how Brian had sat at my table last Thanksgiving, smiling, chatting, practicing my signature while I carved the turkey, planning to rob me. The next morning, January 3rd, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sullivan? It's Martin, my brother." We hadn't spoken in almost a year. Martin lived in Phoenix, had his own life, his own family. We'd been close as kids, but drifted apart as adults. We usually only talked on birthdays and holidays. "Martin, this is a surprise." "Yeah. Well, I'm calling because I'm concerned. Actually, I'm more than concerned. I'm confused and pretty upset." "What the hell is going on with you, Sullivan?" "What do you mean?" "Brian called me yesterday. He was crying. Crying. Sullivan. He said you've cut him off completely, that you're making crazy accusations about him stealing from you, and that he's worried about you." My grip tightened on the phone. "Is that what he said?" "He said you're forgetting things, that you're getting paranoid. He thinks you might have dementia or something. He's terrified, Sullivan. He said you've turned on him for no reason, and you believed him." "I don't know what to believe. That's why I'm calling. But Sullivan, you're 71. Dad had some memory issues before he died. It runs in families. Maybe you should see a doctor. Get checked out." I closed my eyes. Brian had gotten to Martin first. He was building a narrative. The crazy old man losing his mind, making accusations against his devoted son. "Martin, I don't have dementia. Brian and his wife have been stealing from me. I have bank records, police reports, evidence." "Brian said you'd say that. He said you've convinced yourself this is real, but that you gave him permission to access your accounts, and now you don't remember." "I never gave him permission to steal $27,000. $27,000? Sullivan, come on. Where would Brian get that kind of money from your accounts? You're a retired machinist. No offense, but you don't have that kind of money to steal." And there it was. Even my own brother believed Brian's lies. Believed I was too poor, too insignificant to have savings worth stealing. Martin, I need to go. Sullivan, please. Just go to a doctor, get evaluated. If there's nothing wrong, great. But if there is something, we can help you. Brian wants to help you. I hung up. Over the next 3 days, I received 5 more calls. My cousin Janet from Seattle, my old friend Paul from the lumber mill, even Pastor Rick from the church I used to attend before Ann died, all with the same message. Brian had called them. Brian was worried. Brian thought I was losing my mental faculties. Some believed me when I explained. Paul, who'd known me for 35 years, said, "Sullivan, you're the sharpest guy I know. If you say Brian's stealing, I believe you." But others were less certain. Janet kept saying, "But Sullivan, you are getting older. Would it hurt to just get checked out?" The doubt was the worst part. Not in me, but in them. I could see it even over the phone. The hesitation. The gentle, patronizing tone people use with elderly relatives they think might be confused. On January 6th, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Clara Martinez, a woman who worked at the community center where I sometimes played chess. We chatted politely until she said, "Sullivan, I saw Courtney's post on social media. I'm so sorry you're going through that. It must be so hard." "What post?" Clara looked uncomfortable. "Oh, you haven't seen it. Maybe I shouldn't." "What post, Clara?" She pulled out her phone and showed me. It was on one of those social media sites, under Courtney's name. The post had been made 2 days ago. The hardest part of adulthood is watching the people who raised us start to decline. My heart breaks, watching someone I care about struggle with confusion and making accusations they don't fully understand. If you're caring for an elderly parent or relative experiencing cognitive challenges, please know you're not alone. The guilt is overwhelming, but we have to do what's best for them, even when they fight us. Sending strength to everyone going through this. The post had 234 likes, 67 comments, all supportive. "Praying for you. This is so hard. Stay strong. You're doing the right thing." She hadn't mentioned my name, but everyone who knew us would know exactly who she meant. "I have to go," I said to Clara. I left my half-filled cart in the aisle and walked out. At home, I sat in my living room, Dorothy's words echoing in my head. Charity case, factory job, nothing. And now this. An elderly man losing his mind, making accusations, becoming a burden. Brian wasn't just trying to steal my money. He was trying to steal my credibility, my dignity, my very sense of self. That evening, Dorothy came over. She'd seen Courtney's post, too. Everyone had. "Sullivan, honey, I don't believe a word of it. You're as sharp as anyone half your age. It doesn't matter what's true, Dorothy. It matters what people believe. Then we make them believe the truth. We fight back." "How?" "Brian's turning everyone against me." "Not everyone. You've got me. You've got Detective Hayes working on the case. You've got your lawyer. And you've got the truth. That has to count for something." But sitting there, looking at that social media post on Dorothy's phone, I wasn't sure truth counted for much of anything anymore. People in town started looking at me differently. At the post office, the clerk spoke slower, louder, as if I might not understand. At the hardware store, the owner asked if I needed help finding my way home. These were people who'd known me for decades, and now they saw a confused old man. Brian had weaponized the one thing I couldn't easily disprove: my age, and he was winning. The stress of everything began taking a physical toll. I stopped sleeping well, lost my appetite, spent hours staring at those bank statements, those forged signatures, that social media post. On January 14th, I was at the grocery store when my chest seized up, sharp, burning pain that radiated down my left arm. I grabbed the shelf to steady myself, knocking over a display of soup cans. The next thing I knew, Dorothy was kneeling beside me. She'd been shopping too, saw me collapse. She called 911. The ambulance arrived within minutes. The paramedics loaded me onto a stretcher, asking questions I could barely answer. Dorothy rode with me, holding my hand. At Millbrook General Hospital, they rushed me into the emergency room. Doctors poked and prodded, ran tests, hooked me up to machines that beeped and hummed. I hated hospitals. Anne had died in a hospital. The smell, the sounds, everything brought back memories I'd tried to bury. After what felt like hours, a doctor came in. Dr. Wallace, his name tag said. He was young, maybe 40, with tired eyes. Mr. Sullivan, you've experienced severe stress-induced angina. Your heart is under significant strain. The good news is, you haven't had a heart attack. The bad news is you're at high risk for one if you don't make immediate changes. What kind of changes? Reduce stress. Dramatically. Whatever's going on in your life right now, you need to find a way to resolve it or step back from it. Your heart can't take this kind of sustained emotional trauma. At your age, this could trigger a major cardiac event. So I'm supposed to just give up? Let my son steal from me and destroy my reputation? Dr. Wallace looked confused. I don't know the details of your situation, Mr. Sullivan. I just know what your body is telling me. And your body is saying, it's at a breaking point. They kept me overnight for observation. I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to machines beep. The hospital required an emergency contact. I had no one to list, except Dorothy. The next morning, January 15th, as I was being discharged, something happened that made everything worse. Brian and Courtney walked into my hospital room. How did you know I was here? I asked. Small town, Brian said. Word travels. Dad, we need to talk. Get out. Please, just listen. He pulled papers from a bag he was carrying. This is a petition for guardianship and conservatorship. We're filing it with the court. I stared at the papers. What? Courtney stepped forward, her voice soft, almost kind. Sullivan, we're worried about you. This hospitalization proves you're not well. You need someone to help manage your affairs, your medical care. We want to help. This is a legal petition to have me declared incompetent. Not incompetent, Brian said quickly. Just in need of support. The court will assign us as your guardians. We'll make sure you're taken care of. You mean you'll get control of my money? This isn't about money, Dad. This is about your health. I looked at the papers. The petition cited my age, the sudden personality change of cutting Brian off, the fraud accusations Brian denied, and now this hospitalization. There were attached statements from Martin, from Janet, from people Brian had contacted, all expressing concern about my mental state. The hearing was scheduled for February 5th, 3 weeks away. If you try this, I said slowly, I will fight you with everything I have. Dad, you just had a heart episode. You're in no condition to fight anything. A nurse came in then, told them visiting hours were over, and I needed rest. They left, but Brian's words stayed with me. You're in no condition to fight. I was released that afternoon. Dorothy drove me home. I was weak, exhausted, frightened. Dr. Wallace had prescribed medications for my heart and stress. I filled the prescriptions at the pharmacy, came home, and sat in my kitchen. If Brian won this guardianship petition, I'd lose everything. He'd control my finances, my medical decisions where I lived. I'd become exactly what Courtney had said. A charity case. Dependent on them. Powerless. I called Detective Hayes. Has there been any progress on the fraud investigation? Mr. Sullivan, these things take time. We're still gathering evidence. I don't have time. My son is trying to have me declared incompetent. The hearing is in 3 weeks. There was a pause. I see. That does complicate things. Let me see what I can do to expedite our investigation. I called Marcus Webb, my attorney. He was more optimistic. Sullivan, this is actually good news in a way. If Brian's trying to take guardianship, he's desperate. That means our moves are working. But you need a lawyer who specializes in elder law for this. I know someone, Patricia Groves. She's tough, smart, and she doesn't lose these cases. I don't have much money left, Marcus. Not after what Brian stole. Let me call her. Explain the situation. Patricia's good people. She'll work with you. That evening, Patricia Groves called me. Her voice was firm, confident. Mr. Sullivan, Marcus filled me in. I want to take your case. My retainer is normally $10,000, but given the circumstances, I'll do it for 5, and I'll waive that if we recover funds from your son. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We have a lot of work to do. First thing tomorrow, you're getting a full cognitive assessment. We need to prove you're completely competent. Can you come to my office at 9? I'll be there. I spent that night organizing every document I had. Bank statements, police reports, those forged signatures. I barely slept. My chest ached, but I took my medications and pushed through. The next morning, I met Patricia. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back in a bun, sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her office was small but organized. She reminded me of Anne, tough but kind. Over the next week, I underwent extensive cognitive testing, memory tests, problem-solving exercises, psychological evaluations. The psychologist, Dr. Raymond, was thorough. He spent 4 hours with me over 2 sessions. On January 23rd, I got the results. Dr. Raymond sat across from me in Patricia's office. Mr. Sullivan, I've completed a comprehensive cognitive assessment. You performed in the 92nd percentile for your age group. Your memory, reasoning, and judgment are all within normal ranges, actually above average. There is zero evidence of cognitive decline, dementia, or any condition that would impair your ability to manage your own affairs. Patricia smiled. That's exactly what we needed. I felt relief wash over me. Official proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't confused. But then Patricia's expression grew serious. Sullivan, I need you to prepare yourself. Brian's family has money. They'll have an expensive lawyer. This won't be easy. I understand. Good. Because we're going to war. On January 29th, 1 week before the hearing, I received a visitor I never expected. The doorbell rang at 2 in the afternoon. I looked through the peephole and saw an older woman, elegant, wearing a coat that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. I recognized her from the wedding. Helena, Courtney's mother. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Mr. Sullivan, she said, her voice cool and polished. May I come in? I'd like to speak with you. We have nothing to discuss. I think we do. Please. 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Helena sat on my couch, looked around my small living room with barely concealed distaste. She saw my worn furniture, my old television, my simple life, and I could see the judgment in her eyes. Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to be direct. Drop this. Don't contest the conservatorship. Let Brian manage your affairs. In return, we'll make sure you're comfortable. There's a very nice assisted living facility in Portland. Beautiful grounds, excellent care. We'll cover all expenses. You'll want for nothing. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. It's a practical solution. You're clearly overwhelmed. Let us help. The only thing I'm overwhelmed by is my son's betrayal. Helena's expression hardened slightly. You're being foolish. You can't win this. We have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, doctors who will testify to your instability, character witnesses. Brian is prepared to present a compelling case that you're a danger to yourself. I'm not dropping this. She stood, preparing to leave. Then, almost casually, she said something that changed everything. By the way, that Rolex Brian gave Gerald? It wasn't Brian's money. He charged it to your credit card last month. We had the bill sent to our house so you wouldn't see it. Gerald thought it was sweet. Brian using your money to honor his father-in-law. I felt like I'd been punched, Helena continued, her voice light, almost amused. Oh, and the deposit on the beach house we're renting for spring break? Also your card. Brian's been using your credit for months. We thought you knew and approved. He said you insisted on helping. She walked to the door, then turned back. Think about our offer, Mr. Sullivan. It's generous, considering how little you actually have to contribute. The door closed behind her. I stood there, frozen. Then I grabbed my phone and called my credit card company. The one I'd canceled. Asked for a statement history for the past year. They emailed it within 10 minutes. I opened it on my computer, and my hands started shaking. $67,000 in charges. Over 8 months. Luxury hotels in San Francisco and New York. High-end restaurants. A jewelry store in Portland. $18,000. A furniture store, $12,000. A payment to a Mercedes dealership, $15,000. And there, on November 28th, Gerald's fine jewelry, $25,300. The Rolex. I'd paid for my own humiliation. I printed every page. 32 pages of charges, every dinner, every trip, every luxury item, all on my credit card, all without my knowledge or permission. The total theft wasn't $27,000 from my bank account. It was $94,000 when you included the credit card. I sat in my house, those papers spread across my kitchen table. My chest hurt again, but this time it wasn't angina. It was heartbreak. Pure, absolute heartbreak. My son hadn't just stolen from me. He'd built his entire life on my money while treating me like garbage. I looked at that plastic piggy bank still sitting on my shelf. $10. That's what he thought I was worth. He'd stolen $94,000 and given me $10. I put my head in my hands and, for the first time since Anne died, I cried. I didn't sleep that night or the next. My mind wouldn't stop replaying every moment, every lie, every theft. But somewhere in those dark hours, something changed inside me. The grief hardened into something else. Something cold and determined. I'd survived Anne's death. I'd survived 31 years of hard labor. I'd raised a son alone, sacrificed everything, built a life from nothing. I wouldn't let Brian destroy me now. On February 1st, 3 days before the hearing, I called Patricia. I have something, I said. Something big. I brought her the credit card statements. All 32 pages. Told her about Helena's visit. Patricia's eyes lit up as she read through the charges. Sullivan, this changes everything. This isn't a family dispute anymore. This is systematic financial exploitation. And Helena's admission is gold. Did anyone else hear her say this? No, I was alone. Patricia's face fell slightly. That's unfortunate. It would have been helpful to have a witness. Then I remembered something. Wait, Dorothy, my neighbor. She's been recording conversations since Brian started coming around. She was worried about me. Let me call her. Dorothy answered on the first ring. When I asked if her phone had been recording on January 29th, she said, "Oh, honey, yes. I've been keeping it recording whenever anyone comes to your door. Do you need it? Dorothy, you might have just saved my life." She brought over her phone within minutes. Patricia knew how to retrieve the audio file. We listened together. Helena's voice, crystal clear. That Rolex Brian gave Gerald? It wasn't Brian's money. He charged it to your credit card last month. Patricia actually laughed. They just handed us the case. Sullivan, we've got them. She immediately filed an emergency motion to include the credit card fraud in the evidence. She also requested the hearing be moved to open court instead of the judge's chambers, saying the case involved potential criminal activity that warranted public record. The next day, Patricia hired a forensic accountant named Marcus. Not my lawyer Marcus, but a financial investigator. She paid him from her own pocket, told me we'd settle up later. Marcus spent 48 hours diving into Brian and Courtney's finances. What he found was stunning. On February 3rd, Marcus came to Patricia's office where I was waiting. He spread papers across her desk. "Mr. Sullivan, your son and daughter-in-law are drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out. $83,000. Car loans, $67,000. Personal loans from 3 different banks, $41,000. They're 3 months behind on their apartment rent. The Mercedes? Leased, and they're about to default. But Courtney's family has money," I said. Marcus smiled grimly. "That's what I thought too." So I dug deeper. Gerald's consulting business? It's failing. Has been for 2 years. He's propped up by loans he can't repay. The family's house? Second mortgage, nearly foreclosed on last year. Helena's social media life is all smoke and mirrors. They're broke. Patricia leaned forward. So Brian married into a family he thought was wealthy, and Courtney married Brian thinking he'd inherit substantial assets from his father. Marcus continued. I found emails between Brian and Courtney. They're discussing it explicitly. How they need your money because her family is tapped out. How they're both trapped in lies they told each other. Can you use these emails in court? I asked. Already subpoenaed, Patricia said, along with all their financial records. The hearing was set for February 5th at 10 in the morning. Patricia spent the 4th preparing. I tried to rest, take my medications, keep my heart steady. Dr. Wallace had cleared me to attend the hearing but warned me to stay calm. Dorothy came over that evening, brought me dinner, sat with me. You're going to win tomorrow, she said. I hope so. I know so. Truth has a way of winning eventually. I wanted to believe her. The next morning, I put on my best suit. It was 20 years old, a little loose now, but clean and pressed. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old, tired, but I also looked determined. Patricia picked me up at 8:30. We drove to the courthouse together. She briefed me on what to expect. Brian's lawyer is going to paint you as confused, unstable, a danger to yourself. They'll present their witnesses, their narrative. Then we dismantle it. Stay calm. Don't react. Let me handle everything. Okay. Sullivan, I need you to trust me. This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Old wood, fluorescent lights, an American flag in the corner. The judge's bench sat elevated at the front. Judge Sandra Price, according to the nameplate. Brian was already there with Courtney. Their lawyer was a man in an expensive suit, mid-40s, slick hair. Next to them sat Helena and Gerald, both looking calm and confident. Brian wouldn't meet my eyes. Judge Price entered at 10 sharp. We all stood. Then Saturday. She was in her early 60s, stern-faced, no nonsense. This is a petition for guardianship and conservatorship, she began. Mr. Brian Sullivan petitioning for guardianship over his father, Mr. Sullivan. Let's proceed. Brian's lawyer, who introduced himself as Attorney Foster, stood. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. Mr. Sullivan is 71 years old and experiencing clear signs of cognitive decline. He's made paranoid accusations against his devoted son, cut off all family contact without reason, and recently suffered a medical emergency due to stress he's creating for himself. My client seeks only to ensure his father's well-being. Foster called his first witness, Martin, my brother, testifying by video call from Arizona. Martin looked uncomfortable on the screen. Foster asked him about our conversations. He seemed confused. Martin said reluctantly, making accusations that didn't make sense. I suggested he see a doctor. And did he seem like himself? No. He seemed paranoid. Patricia didn't cross-examine, just smiled slightly. Next, Foster called Janet, my cousin. She testified similarly. Then a doctor, a psychiatrist named Dr. Reynolds I'd never met, who testified that elderly people experiencing paranoia and making false accusations often showed signs of dementia. Patricia objected. This witness has never examined Mr. Sullivan. I'm speaking generally about the condition, Reynolds said smoothly. Then Courtney took the stand. She cried, talked about how much they loved me, how worried Brian was, how the accusations hurt, but they just wanted to help. He gave us permission to access his accounts, she said. He insisted. He wanted to help us. Foster showed the judge those bank transfers. As you can see, regular, small transfers. The pattern of a father helping his son. Finally, Brian testified. He looked at the judge with sad eyes, talked about how I'd changed, how he was terrified he was losing me, how he only wanted to ensure I was safe and cared for. I love my father, he said, voice breaking. I'm just trying to do the right thing. It was a compelling performance. I could see some people in the courtroom, court staff, looking sympathetic. Then Patricia stood up. Your Honor, I have evidence that fundamentally changes the nature of this proceeding. She approached the bench with a thick folder. Judge Price's expression shifted as she read through it. Patricia systematically destroyed their case. First, Dr. Raymond's cognitive evaluation. Mr. Sullivan scored in the 92nd percentile for his age group. There is no cognitive decline. Then the bank records showing the fraudulent transfers, the forged signatures. Mr. Sullivan never authorized these transfers. His signature was forged. Then the credit card statements. All 32 pages. $67,000 in unauthorized charges over 8 months. She played Dorothy's recording. Helena's voice filled the courtroom. That Rolex Brian gave Gerald? It wasn't Brian's money. He charged it to your credit card. Courtney went pale. Helena gripped Gerald's arm. Patricia presented the emails between Brian and Courtney. Their discussions about needing my money, their lies to each other, Marcus's financial report showing their massive debts. This isn't a concerned son trying to help his father, Patricia said. This is a calculated scheme to exploit an elderly man and seize his assets to cover their own financial failures. Then she called Detective Linda Hayes. Hayes testified about the ongoing fraud investigation, about the forged documents, about the pattern of theft. We have arrest warrants prepared, Hayes said, pending the outcome of this hearing. The courtroom was silent. Judge Price looked at Brian. Her expression had transformed from neutral to coldly furious. Mr. Brian Sullivan, you come into my courtroom seeking guardianship over a man you've been systematically defrauding? Your Honor, I can explain. I don't want your explanations. I've heard enough. Judge Price denied the guardianship petition immediately. Then she went further. I'm issuing a restraining order. Mr. Brian Sullivan, you are prohibited from contacting your father or coming within 500 feet of him. I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. And I'm awarding costs and attorney fees to Mr. Sullivan. She looked at Detective Hayes. You said you have warrants? Yes, Your Honor. Execute them. Right there, in the courtroom, Detective Hayes stood. She walked to where Brian sat and pulled out handcuffs. Brian Sullivan, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. Courtney screamed. Actually screamed. Brian went white as Hayes cuffed him and read him his rights. Helena tried to leave, but Patricia called out. Your Honor, I've also filed a civil lawsuit against Mr. Brian Sullivan, Mrs. Courtney Sullivan, and Mrs. Helena Gentry for conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. Judge Price nodded for the record. They led Brian away. He looked back at me once. I met his eyes. There was no sadness in me anymore. No anger. Just a cold, empty feeling where my son used to be. Courtney collapsed into her mother's arms. Helena's perfect composure had cracked. Gerald was already on his phone, probably calling lawyers. Patricia turned to me. It's over, Sullivan. You won. But standing there, watching my son being led away in handcuffs, it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. The months following the hearing were a blur of legal proceedings. Brian was charged with multiple counts of fraud and elder abuse. The evidence was overwhelming. His court-appointed attorney advised him to take a plea deal. In May, Brian pleaded guilty. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 2. He was also ordered to pay full restitution, $94,000 plus interest and penalties. Courtney filed for divorce before the sentencing. I heard through Dorothy that she moved back in with her parents. Helena and Gerald's financial troubles became public knowledge. Their house went into foreclosure. Their social circle abandoned them. The life they'd built on lies and debt collapsed completely. Patricia's civil lawsuit proceeded separately. In July, the court ruled in my favor. I was awarded full restitution, plus damages for emotional distress, plus attorney fees and court costs. The total judgment was over $200,000. The court set up a garnishment plan. Brian's wages would be garnished for the rest of his working life if necessary. Courtney's assets, what few she had, were seized. Helena and Gerald's remaining property was put under lien. I got my money back, eventually. Most of it anyway. But it wasn't about the money anymore. I spent those months recovering. My heart condition stabilized with medication and Dr. Wallace's care. The stress eased. I started sleeping again. Patricia became a friend. She'd check in weekly, make sure I was okay. You know, Sullivan, in 30 years of practice, I've never seen a case where the victim fought back as effectively as you did. Most people give up. You didn't. I had good help, I told her. You had good character. That matters more. Dorothy and I grew even closer. We started having dinner together twice a week. Just 2 lonely people who'd found friendship in each other. She taught me to cook properly. I fixed things around her house. It was nice. My brother Martin came to visit in June. He apologized, deeply and sincerely, for not believing me initially. "I should have known better," he said. "You've never been anything but honest your whole life." "I'm sorry, Sullivan. You believed what sounded believable. I don't blame you. I blame me." We spent a week together, rebuilding what Brian had damaged. Martin and I were brothers again. I joined the community center. Dorothy frequented. Started playing chess regularly, joined a book club, even tried my hand at watercolor painting. I wasn't very good, but I enjoyed it. I also volunteered at the legal aid clinic in town. Patricia had suggested it. "You understand elder abuse now. You could help others spot the signs." I worked there one afternoon a week, talking to older people about financial safety, warning signs of exploitation, how to protect themselves. If I could help even one person avoid what I went through, it was worth it. Brian wrote me letters from prison, 3 of them over 6 months. I never opened them. Dorothy asked if I wanted to know what they said. "No," I told her. "Whatever he has to say now doesn't change what he did." "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" I thought about that for a long time. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting him back into my life. Some betrayals are too complete. That's fair. The rental property in Eugene, the one I'd planned to give Brian, I sold. I used the money to pay off my house completely, set up a better retirement fund, and donated $50,000 to a local charity that helped elderly victims of financial abuse. Anne would have liked that. The trust fund I'd established for Brian's future children, I dissolved and used to fund scholarships at the community college. 2 scholarships a year for students from low-income families studying skilled trades. I named them after Anne. I kept that plastic piggy bank on my mantle. Not as a reminder of the insult, but as a reminder of my worth. $10, Brian had thought. But I'd proven I was worth so much more, not in money, but in dignity, strength, and the courage to stand up for myself. One evening in August, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. Dorothy was in the chair next to me. We each had a glass of lemonade. The evening was warm, peaceful. "You seem happy," Dorothy said. "I am. That surprises me, but I am." "You deserve to be happy. So do you." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the theft, the lies, the court battle. It had nearly destroyed me, but it hadn't. I'd survived. More than survived, I'd won. Not because Brian went to prison or because I got my money back. I'd won because I'd refused to let his greed and betrayal define my worth. I'd fought for my dignity when everyone told me to give up. I'd stood firm when it would have been easier to surrender. Brian had tried to make me small, worthless, a charity case, an embarrassment, a confused old man. But I wasn't any of those things. I was Sullivan, a man who'd worked hard his whole life, who'd loved deeply and sacrificed willingly, who'd raised a son the best he could, even though that son had chosen a path I never taught him. I was a man who knew his worth couldn't be measured in dollars or Rolexes or fancy gifts. My worth was in my character, my integrity, my willingness to fight for what was right, even when it hurt. The sun dipped below the horizon. The streetlights began to flicker on. Dorothy reached over and squeezed my hand. "Good night, Sullivan." "Good night, Dorothy." I sat there a while longer, alone with my thoughts. Anne's face came to mind. I imagined what she'd say about everything that happened. She'd be disappointed in Brian. Heartbroken, probably. But she'd be proud of me. I knew that in my bones. I did okay, didn't I? I whispered to the evening air, to her memory. I stood up. I fought back. I won. The breeze rustled the trees, and I chose to believe it was her answer. "Yes, Sullivan, you did okay. I've learned a lot from this experience. I learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, that the people who owe you the most can hurt you the deepest, that greed can turn even a son against his father. But I also learned that self-respect is worth more than any relationship built on obligation. That truth, when you fight for it, has a power liars can never overcome. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. I gave Brian everything growing up. Love, sacrifice, opportunity. But I couldn't give him character. That's something each person must develop themselves. Brian chose greed and betrayal over integrity and gratitude. That was his choice, not mine. And I chose dignity and truth over easy surrender. That was my choice. In the end, truth won. It didn't happen quickly or easily. It took months of fighting, of gathering evidence, of refusing to back down. But it won. I'm alone now, in the sense that I no longer have a son. But I'm not lonely. I have Dorothy, Patricia, Martin. I have new friends from the community center. I have a life that's simple but genuine. And I have peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing you stood up for yourself when it mattered most. That piggy bank still sits on my mantle. $10. Sometimes I look at it and smile. Because Brian was wrong. I wasn't worth $10. I wasn't worth $25,000. I wasn't worth any amount of money. I was worth everything I fought for and won. My dignity, my truth, my freedom, and that's priceless. So if you're facing betrayal from someone you love, someone you trusted, someone you sacrificed everything for, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by how they treat you. It's determined by how you respond when they try to diminish you. Stand up. Fight back. Don't let anyone, not even family, steal your dignity, because in the end, that's the only thing that's truly yours, and it's worth fighting for. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Someone in your family? Or a close friend who took advantage of your love and generosity? How did you handle it? Did you fight back? Or did you walk away? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how others have navigated these painful situations. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships and your own worth, please hit that like button. It helps others find this story who might need to hear it. And subscribe to this channel if you want more real stories about overcoming betrayal, finding strength, and reclaiming your dignity. There are more stories to come, and I promise each one will remind you of your worth. Finally, share this story with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe you know someone going through something similar, someone who's being taken advantage of or made to feel worthless. Send them this story. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know it's okay to fight back. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I hope my story gave you something to think about, maybe even some courage if you need it. Remember, you're worth more than anyone else's opinion of you. You're worth more than their treatment of you. You're worth fighting for. Take care of yourselves, stand strong, and never, ever let anyone convince you that you're worth less than you are. Until next time,